Good evening, everyone, and welcome back. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching, so YouTube will keep showing you stories like this. Now, let's begin. I'm Kyle, 24, and I was driving for rideshare to cover rent while finishing my business degree. Nothing exciting, just late shifts in the suburbs where drunk people needed rides home from parties. The neighborhood I worked that night was one of those places where people compete over decorations. We're talking animatronic witches, fog machines, entire graveyards in front yards. I'd driven through it maybe 30 times that October. It was over the top, but harmless. Around 11:30, my app pinged with a pickup request. The passenger name was listed as The Carver. I remember thinking it was a Halloween username, which people did sometimes. The pin dropped on Vestry Lane, which I didn't recognize, but the app said it was only 4 minutes away. I followed the GPS down streets I'd driven before, but then it took me onto a road I'd never seen. Vestry Lane. A narrow street with no streetlights, just dense trees on both sides. The GPS showed it as a dead end. When I reached the end, there was a single house, 2 stories, white siding, ordinary except for the decorations. And God, there were so many decorations. The entire front lawn was filled with scarecrows, dozens of them, all life-sized, positioned in clusters. Some were standing, some were seated in lawn chairs. A few were bent over like they were gardening. The porch light was on. That was the only light anywhere. I checked my phone. The pickup pin was right there, at the house. I texted the passenger, "Here outside." No response. I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes. I tried calling. It rang once and went to a generic voicemail. Here's the thing, I should have canceled and left. But I'd already driven there, and the app penalizes you for canceling too many rides. I needed the money, so I waited. That's when I noticed the scarecrows. I'd been looking at my phone, and when I glanced up, I could have sworn one of them had moved. Not drastically, just a subtle shift. The one closest to my car, it was facing the house before. Now it was angled more toward the street. Toward me. I stared at it. It didn't move again. It was just a scarecrow. Burlap sack for a head, painted face, flannel shirt and jeans stuffed with straw. Completely still. I laughed at myself. The wind, probably. Except there wasn't any wind. The trees weren't moving. Nothing was. I checked the time. 5 minutes now. I decided to give it 2 more, then cancel. That's when my headlights flickered. Just a quick dip like a power surge, and when they came back on, I saw it clearly. The scarecrows had moved. Not all of them, but enough. The ones in the back of the lawn were closer to the house now, and the ones near the street, there were more of them than before. I'm sure of it. They'd repositioned into a loose semicircle, all of them facing my car. My hands were shaking. I put the car in reverse, but I couldn't stop staring at them. They were too detailed. The clothes weren't generic costumes, they were real clothes, worn and faded. Coats and boots. One wore a dress with a floral pattern, and their faces. God, their faces. I turned on my high beams. I don't know why. Maybe I thought it would make them look less real, but it did the opposite. The faces weren't burlap or plastic. They were faces, sunken, dried, leathery skin stretched tight over bone, empty eye sockets, mouths slightly open, like they'd been interrupted mid-sentence. They weren't scarecrows. They were people, or they had been. I couldn't move. I just sat there staring, my foot on the brake. One of them, front row center, was wearing a rideshare jacket. Same company logo. same cheap polyester material I had in my trunk. My phone buzzed. A new message in the app. Thanks for waiting. I threw the car into reverse and floored it. I didn't look back. I just drove. My tires screamed on the pavement. I hit the main road doing 50 in a residential zone and didn't slow down until I was back in a part of town I recognized. I canceled the ride. I didn't care about the penalty. When I got home, I searched for Vestry Lane. It doesn't exist. Not on Google Maps, not on the county property records. I even drove back the next day in full daylight. I couldn't find the turnoff. It was just gone. I reported the account, the Carver, to rideshare. They said no account by that name had ever requested a ride from me. They had no record of the trip. I quit driving the next week. I told people I needed to focus on school, which was true, but that's not why I stopped. My roommates had both gone home for the weekend. Jake went to his girlfriend's place upstate, and Marcus flew back to see his family in Ohio. I stayed behind because I had a massive exam that Monday and figured I'd use the quiet time to study. Our apartment's on the 3rd floor of this old converted house on Maple Street. Nothing fancy, but the rent's cheap and it's close to campus. Around 8 that night, I was at my desk working through thermodynamics problems when my laptop lost connection. No big deal at first. I checked my phone to hotspot, but it had no signal either. Not even emergency calls. I figured maybe a tower went down or something. Halloween night, probably kids messing around somewhere. That's when I heard the first tap at the door, just one, soft, almost polite, like someone knocking with a single knuckle. I called out, asking who it was. Nothing. I went back to my textbook. I was using flashcards by then since my laptop was useless. Maybe 30 seconds later, another tap. Same spot on the door, I think. Same soft, deliberate sound. I got up and checked the peephole. The hallway was empty. The motion sensor light was on, which meant someone had been there recently, but I couldn't see anyone. I opened the door anyway, looked both directions. Nobody. The other 2 apartments on our floor were dark. Those tenants had gone out for the night. I locked the door. I specifically remember turning the deadbolt and checking it twice because something about those knocks felt wrong. Not threatening exactly, just off. I tried to go back to studying, but I couldn't focus. I kept glancing at the door. Then I heard it again. 3 taps this time, evenly spaced. Tap, tap, tap. I waited, listening. My apartment was completely silent except for the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I didn't move. Didn't call out. After maybe a minute, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, measured. They stopped right outside my door. The thing is, I could see the shadow under the door. Someone was standing there, just standing there in the hallway, not moving. I watched that shadow for what felt like 10 minutes, but was probably 3 or 4. It didn't shift, didn't walk away, just stood there. I don't know why this detail matters, but the shadow seemed wrong. Too dark, maybe. Or the edges too sharp. I kept staring at it, trying to figure out what was off about it. Then it was gone. No footsteps walking away, just gone. I should have left then. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I just go to a friend's place or sleep in my car? Here's why. I convinced myself I was being paranoid. It was Halloween. Someone was probably messing with me. And I had that exam and all my materials were here, and it just seemed stupid to run away from some Halloween prank. Around 10:30, I was in the kitchen making coffee when I saw movement outside the window. We're on the 3rd floor, so there's nothing out there but street level and the parking lot. But I swear I saw someone standing under the street light across from our building, just standing there, facing my window. I turned off the kitchen light so I could see better. The figure was still there, average height maybe, wearing something dark. I couldn't make out details from that distance, but they weren't moving, just standing in that circle of light, looking up at my window. I stepped back from the glass. My hands were shaking by then, and I couldn't get a full breath. I counted to 10 and looked again. They were gone. Over the next 2 hours, I kept seeing them, different spots each time. Once by the tree near the parking lot entrance, once at the corner of the building where the alley starts, once, and this is what really got to me, standing in the parking lot directly below my bedroom window, looking straight up. Each time I spotted them, they were in shadow or just far enough away that I couldn't see a face or any real features. But I knew they were watching me. I could feel it. Around 1 a.m, the pounding started. Not knocking anymore, actual pounding, like someone slamming their fist against the door with real force. 3 times. Then silence. Then 3 more. I grabbed my phone. Still no signal. I thought about the fire escape, but that meant going past my bedroom window, and I couldn't make myself do it. The pounding came again. The door frame rattled. I checked the peephole. Nobody there, but I could hear breathing on the other side of the door. Slow, steady breathing. I waited in my living room until sunrise with every light on and a kitchen knife in my hand. When Jake got back around noon, everything was normal. My phone had signal. The internet worked. I told him I'd had a weird night but didn't go into details. He would have thought I was losing it. I'm a high school history teacher. Ethan Brooks, 29, been at Lincoln High for 4 years now. That night, I'd stayed late to organize exam materials in my classroom. Room 214, second floor, east wing. The building was supposed to be empty after 6, just me and maybe a janitor somewhere downstairs. I was sorting through old quizzes when I heard it. A pop of static from the ceiling speaker, sharp, sudden, like someone had briefly switched on the PA system. I looked up at the plastic grill waiting for Coach Henderson's voice, or maybe a custodian accidentally hitting a button in the office. But the PA system gets disabled at 6 every night. Automatic shutdown to save power. I'd been told that my first week teaching there. I went back to my papers. Probably just some electrical bleed, a capacitor discharging or something. Old building, these things happen. Then I heard the voice. It came through the speaker. Dry, rasping, like someone speaking through layers of cloth or from the bottom of a well. I couldn't make out most of it. The words were too distorted, too far away. But the end was crystal clear. 2 syllables that made my hands go still on the desk. Brooks. My name. My last name. The static cut out completely. The sudden silence felt heavier than it should have. I stood there staring at that speaker, waiting for more, but nothing came. My throat had gone dry. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a recording from earlier in the day, somehow playing back on a delay. Maybe someone had said books or looks, and my brain filled in the rest because I was alone, and it was Halloween, and my nerves were already on edge. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough for my legs to start feeling restless. I needed to move, to do something. I turned toward my desk to grab my phone, and that's when I saw it. The skeleton. I keep a cheap plastic skeleton hanging on the coat rack by the door. 5-foot decoration, the kind you buy at a drugstore. I'd hung it there the week before, facing outward toward the hallway, its empty eye sockets staring at anyone who walked past. The students thought it was funny. I'd positioned it that way myself, making sure it was visible through the door's window. Now it was facing inward, into the classroom, staring directly at where I'd been sitting. I want to be clear about this. That skeleton is held to the coat rack by a simple wire loop through the top of its skull. It doesn't rotate freely. You have to lift it off the hook completely to change which direction it faces. And the door, I could see it was ajar, maybe 6 inches open. I distinctly remembered closing it when I'd arrived. My first thought was that someone was playing a prank. Had to be. Some kid had snuck back into the building, heard me working, and decided to mess with the teacher on Halloween. Funny, right? I even smiled a little, though my face felt stiff. I walked toward the door, already preparing the lecture I'd give about breaking school rules. I pulled the door open wider and looked into the hallway. Empty. Fluorescent lights humming overhead, that industrial gray tile stretching in both directions. No running footsteps. No giggles from around the corner. Nothing. Here's the thing. That hallway is long and straight. If someone had moved that skeleton and run, I would have heard them. The floor is old linoleum over concrete. It echoes. You can hear someone walking from 3 classrooms away. I stood there listening. The building had that particular quality of silence that only happens when you're truly alone. You know what I mean. That absence of human sound that makes you aware of every small noise, every click and creak of settling architecture. I went back inside and approached the skeleton. My hands were shaking as I reached out to turn it back around. The plastic was cold. Not room temperature cool, but actually cold, like it had been outside in October air. I touched the wire loop at the top of its skull. There was no way it had rotated on its own. No wind, no vibration, no logical reason for it to move. That's when I noticed something else. On my desk, the stack of quizzes I'd been sorting, they'd been arranged by period, 1st through 7th, left to right. Now they were scattered, mixed up, some of them face down. I'm particular about organization. I would have noticed if I'd knocked them over. I grabbed my bag and left. Didn't turn off the lights. Didn't lock the door. Just walked out and kept walking until I was in my car with the doors locked. My hands shook so badly it took 3 tries to get the key in the ignition. The next morning, I came back early. The door was closed and locked. The skeleton was facing outward again, exactly how I'd originally hung it. The papers on my desk were stacked neatly by period, 1 through 7. I asked the night custodian if he'd been in my room. He said no, hadn't been on the 2nd floor at all that night. I checked with the office about the PA system. They confirmed it had been disabled at 6:03, automatic shutdown, no exceptions. I still teach in that room. I took the skeleton down the day after Halloween and haven't put up decorations since. But sometimes, late in the afternoon when most students have gone home, I hear that speaker above my desk emit a soft pop of static. It never lasts more than a second. I've learned not to look up when it happens. I'm a contractor, mostly renovations and property prep. 29, been doing this for 6 years. The job was straightforward. Clear out a deceased estate so the family could list it. The owner had been dead 3 years, house sitting empty the whole time, standard work. I had done dozens like it. The place was on Maple Grove, one of those 70s split levels with wood paneling and shag carpet. Family said take everything to the dump, keep anything valuable. I started in the basement on Halloween morning because I wanted to finish before dark. Call it superstition, but empty houses feel different on Halloween. The basement was cluttered but normal. Boxes of Christmas decorations, old furniture, the usual stuff people forget about. I was hauling up a filing cabinet when I noticed the paneling on the east wall didn't match. One section was darker, the grooves slightly off. I knocked on it, hollow. Behind the panel I found a door. Not hidden exactly, just boarded over with plywood and 2x4s. Someone had taken serious effort to seal it. I had to use a crowbar to pry the boards loose. And when the last one came free, I smelled it. Stale air, but also something organic. Like old laundry mixed with something sour. The door was unlocked. Inside was a room maybe 8 by 10 feet, no windows. A camping lantern sat in the corner, the battery dead. There was a sleeping bag, a folding chair, some empty water bottles, granola bar wrappers, a bucket in the corner I didn't look at closely. But it was the walls that made my stomach drop. Every surface was covered in writing. Black marker, frantic handwriting. Most of it was the same phrase repeated over and over. They don't know I'm here. Hundreds of times, covering every inch. In some spots, the words overlapped so much they were illegible. I pulled out my phone for the flashlight, and that's when I saw the fresher writing. Different marker, blue instead of black. Same handwriting, though, I think. It said, "He's coming back on Halloween." My hands went cold. The blue marker looked recent, not years old like it should have been. I backed out of the room and called the family contact, a nephew named Derek. Asked if anyone had been in the house recently. He said no, they had had it locked up tight since the funeral. Only the lawyer and realtor had keys, and both confirmed nobody had accessed it. I asked about the boarded-up room. Derek went quiet. Then he said there was no boarded-up room. His uncle had finished the basement himself in the 80s, did all the paneling. There was never any extra space. I sent him photos. He called back 10 minutes later and his voice was different. He asked if I was messing with him. I wasn't. He said he would call the police. While I waited, I went to the neighbors. The house on the left had been vacant for months. The house on the right was owned by an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen. I asked if she had seen anyone around the Garrett place. She looked at me funny and said no. Then she asked why I was really asking. I told her about the room. Her expression changed. She said when Mr. Garrett was alive, he used to complain about noises in his basement. Thought it was raccoons. This was maybe 6, 7 years ago. But he never found anything. 7 years ago, before he sealed up that room. The police came around 3 that afternoon. They searched the house, checked the room, took photos. One officer told me it looked like someone had been squatting there at some point, but probably years ago. The newer writing was likely older than it looked. Marker can stay fresh-looking in sealed spaces. He said not to worry about it. But here's what I didn't tell them. When I was waiting in the basement for them to arrive, I heard something upstairs. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving through the main floor. I called out thinking it was the nephew coming early. No response. The footsteps stopped right above where I was standing. I went upstairs. Every door and window was still locked from the inside. Nobody there. I finished the job 2 days later, working only during daylight. Never went back in that room. The family sold the house to a flipper in December. Last week I drove past it. There was a car in the driveway. I don't know why I stopped, but I did. Walked up to the front window and looked inside. The basement door was open, and I swear I saw someone standing at the bottom of the stairs, just standing there in the dark, facing up toward me. I got back in my truck and left. I haven't gone back, but I keep thinking about that writing. He's coming back on Halloween. It's March now. I don't know what happens when October comes around again.